Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
This episode is brought to you by La Quinta by Wyndham. Your work can take you all over the place, like Texas. You've never been, but it's going to be great because you're staying at La Quinta by Wyndham. Their free Bright Side breakfast will give you energy for the day ahead. And after, you can unwind using their free high-speed Wi-Fi. Tonight, La Quinta. Tomorrow, you shine. Book your stay today at lq.com.
Hello, Beat Check listeners. I'm Lizzy Acker, a reporter at the Oregonian, and last month I got to interview Laura Hill, who was one of the original designers of the Portland International Airport's iconic green, she would call it green, carpet, some call it teal. Architecture and design firm SRG Partnership was redesigning Portland's airport in 1986, and Hill was the principal interior designer. She talks about how the famous design came to be, the research they did at other airports, and what other designs were pitched. Here's our conversation. Tell me, when did the process to design this carpet begin?
Well, in 1986, SRG Partnership was hired by the port to redesign the entire interior of the airport with a focus on renovating the center area of the main terminal into a retail hub. Mm-hmm. And their main goal, the port's goal, was to make the airport a welcoming gateway to Oregon, mm-hmm. and to reflect on the Pacific Northwest. Mm-hmm. And, I kind of like to put the carpet design in context because it was a piece of a much larger project.
Yeah.
And so I kind of want to back up to what the whole project was and how the carpet played into that.
Yeah.
That sound
totally. That's really interesting, especially because we're going through this big remodel now.
Yes. As airports constantly seem to be under construction.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, there was this big remodel of the airport, and that would have had to been after the one in the 80s because I wasn't old enough to remember 1986. I was around, but I was only 4. So
Well, it was 40 years ago. And so as I reflect back on that design, I must say, of all of my design work in my career, this is probably, it was not the one I thought would be still so popular. And I just wish I had a nickel for every time that the carpet was reproduced. And but it's real joy and sense of pride, I think, for me and SRG, my whole firm, mm-hmm. to have something that we've designed become such an icon and a kind of a symbol that's loved. Yeah. And really an unexpected part of the design process.
Yeah. So it was you and another person who designed this carpet?
Well, it was a very large team.
Okay.
My business partner, John Schleining. John was the partner in charge of the project and in charge of the architectural aspects, mm-hmm. and I led the interior design aspects of the project. Okay. So SRG never really distinguished between architecture and interiors. They really saw that every element of design needed to work in unison. Mm. So it was really a joy to work with a firm that had that attitude. One of the interesting aspects of the project is there was a very complex client group. There are people from the Port of Portland, the airport leadership group. Right. Occasionally, city council members would participate, concessionaires, airline representatives, and they all had a big stake in what was going to happen and enjoyed participating in the design process. Yeah. So it was complex in that way. And
that became the sort of that big marketplace in the middle that
yes.
now is kind of closed down, but they're doing
Right.
stuff, but that, where Nike and Powell's and all that stuff was.
Yes,
Oh, wow.
that was the major um, architectural component of the project.
Mhm.
And as we worked with the client and we understood they wanted to represent Oregon, the
Mhm.
big idea that emerged was the Oregon marketplace.
Mhm.
And it was a really unique operational model that was not seen in other airports. Usually you had the big generic national concessionaire.
Mhm.
It was the same in every airport except, like the name on the t-shirt changed,
Right.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
this model was to bring in only retailers who were from Oregon, were Oregon based, and somehow represented some of the values of Oregon and the Pacific Northwest. So they brought in Powell Books and Norm Thompson and Nike and Real Mother Goose, places that were really high quality local businesses.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a risk. There were economists who were saying this isn't our standard.
Mhm.
And fortunately, the port was brave enough and innovative enough to be forward thinking and decided to give this a try. It turned out to be very successful for both the port and the retailers. So other airports have tried to model it, but I don't know of another that was as specifically own, retailed by local businesses.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen one that's so, I mean, there was something so specific about it was almost like going to a very cool mall, you know?
Yes, yes. Well, in fact, I think in the first few years, now I've been retired for a while, so my information is, well, things have changed, let's
Right,
put it
sure.
that way. But in the early years of the Oregon market, about 30% of the customers were not passengers. There
Mm.
were people going to the airport to shop because it had such great, unique
Mhm.
shopping opportunities. A lot
Yeah.
of people from Washington would come across the river to buy
Mhm.
things tax free. And, one of the requirements of the retailers was that they could only charge what they would charge in their normal, like downtown stores. Whereas,
Yeah.
how marked up a bottle of water at the airport costs $5. It's
Mhm.
huge markups because they've got a captured audience.
Yeah.
But that was one of the stipulations, and I think made for a really successful draw for customers.
And and airport culture was so different for a while, like before 9/11, obviously, or before the security thing changed.
Yes.
You would just go, and hang out, like waiting for someone, or before your family took. I was an exchange student in high school. Actually, I left from the Eugene airport, but I do remember like many times just spending time at that airport before or waiting for someone at the, for a flight in a way that we just don't do that now, you know?
No, 9/11 definitely changed airports
Yeah.
significantly. Um,
Yeah.
well, at the time we started the project, that central area of the main terminal was kind of a dark interior volume with scattered retail and food and waiting areas and um, automobiles on display down the concourse, that interior concourse, uh,
Interesting.
and so definitely not much personality that reflected Oregon.
What was the flooring?
It was a carpet,
Okay.
and that was very unique at that time.
Mm.
Carpet in airports was rare, but the port had had some good experience with it, so they were willing to look at using carpet again. And there were a few people on the client committee who absolutely hated the sound of rollerboards, click, 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 click over tile floors.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And they're just adamant about not having that. Now, I just read an article and kind of preparing for this. I kind of looked back at what was going on. Rollerboards were relatively new
Okay.
in the 80s,
Mhm.
but they were prevalent enough that people were aware of the click, click, clack. And one thing that I read said, we had men on the moon before we put wheels on our luggage.
That's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's really great. But they were emerging as the popular luggage.
Mhm.
So we had a lot of support for looking at carpeting.
Mhm.
One of the things that we did was we toured other airports that had carpet.
Hmm.
And so representatives from the design team and from the client group, we toured several, but the ones that really stood out for me, the first was Las Vegas. And as you entered, there were these big, huge stainless steel palm trees
Mhm.
that they were quite spectacular, under which there were slot machines.
Yeah.
And so, that's their regional symbol.
Yeah.
They had carpet tile, brightly colored, flashy carpet tile.
Mhm.
And again, carpet tile was a very new product in the 80s. So the problem they were having was passengers were actually stealing carpet tiles as souvenirs. And I don't know whether they lost in the slot machine, so they took a piece of carpet. So as you walked through, there were like missing teeth here and there,
Oh,
as you because
yeah.
somebody would pull one up. The next airport I remember was at Albuquerque, and they had borrowed Pueblo artistic motif
Mhm.
throughout the airport. They had carpeting that was a very beautiful design, colors of the desert, and very regional. And that was very appealing to us. So what is it that makes Oregon define its regionalism?
Mhm.
It was a hard question.
Yeah.
Then the highlight of that trip was going to Atlanta, that was experimenting with carpet here and there. The problem they were having was cigarette burns, that on the carpet, and chewing gum.
Uh-huh.
And so this also tells you, this was before no smoking in an airport.
Right. You were
So
smoking in planes and airports and everywhere.
their design was a rather drab beige
Mhm.
with little like chiclet sized brown and black patterns that camouflaged the cigarette burns. Was not to be our inspiration.
Right. Like instead we'll just pre-burn it.
That's right. We'll hide those cigarette burns. So when we actually started the design of the carpet
Mhm.
as an element of this whole, uh, ideas came in from everywhere. Every client member had ideas, and every design person in my firm had ideas, and some good, some kind of odd.
Yeah.
Uh, there was a big proponent for rose patterns,
Uh-huh.
because of the Rose City.
Right. Mhm.
I found that to be more appropriate, perhaps, for a hotel ballroom than the airport. It was too Portland centric.
Yeah.
So then mountains and waves became an
Mm.
interest. But again, that was Western Oregon, but it wasn't reflecting the geographic diversity that we have throughout Oregon.
Mhm.
So that was sort of put aside. One was clouds and raindrops, which for obvious reasons was rejected. So our team started to look at things that were less representational and more symbolic. Um, my interest was in finding something that had some motion and movement, and it had to work not only just under your feet, but you looked across great expanses of these concourses, so it had to have some interest at a very large scale as well. And as we were looking at those geometries, Someone said, gee, that kind of looks like the screens of the control tower, where airplanes are X's and runways were little diamond patterns. And while it took off, that idea took off. So I don't mean that as a pun.
Yeah,
but,
it's a good one though.
But we worked with that. Now, it's not literally anything you would see in the control tower. I'm sure the control tower operators look at it and say, what? But we were inspired by that concept.
Yeah.
And it evolved and moved and became more of a symbol that could be interpreted in hundreds of ways. So we were never intending it to be a realistic pattern, but one that was really interesting and colorful close up and created that large scale that worked in huge areas as well. Another thing that was another part of the design process that was interesting is this was done before computer-aided design was used. And so everything was hand-drawn. And you can imagine that, we drew it small, but we also had to draw it at full scale and try to understand, what it did in a large scale. So there were people who spent weeks and weeks drawing patterns and testing ideas. And we finally narrowed down to the manufacturer that we were going to use, and it was U.S. Axminster. And Axminster. It's Axminster. U.S. Axminster. It was actually, I believe, a British company that had a U.S. Component, and they no longer have a U.S. component.
Interesting, yeah.
But at the time, they were making very high quality woven carpet, and woven carpets tend to last 3 times longer than a tufted carpet. So while it was more expensive, it was going to wear much longer and was considered worth the value. We ended up going to their manufacturing plant in Greenville, Mississippi, and they had computer-aided design, which was just like this glorious new experience for me and the designer that went. And we were taught how to basically look at our patterns, and then they could print out at full scale the pattern in sheets that were like 10 feet long and maybe 3 or 4 feet wide and 10 feet long. So we could start to look at it in that large scale.
Yeah.
So that was just a wonderful part of the experience. It was my first CAD exposure.
Wow. And how did you guys come up with the color palette? Because I feel like one of the things that is so that people like love about the carpet and that didn't love about the replacement carpet is the colors. They're so vibrant.
Yes. Well, in selecting the colors, part of it was we wanted it to be warm and inviting, which was we considered a Northwest attitude. And the green, certainly, not all of Oregon is that green, but green of nature, bringing nature and natural building materials into the project was a huge part of our description or our efforts toward a regional image.
Yeah.
And so the dark green, in fact, I kind of cringe when I hear it called teal, because to me it's not teal.
Okay.
Teal is kind of trendy at the time.
Okay, so teal.
So I don't call it teal, but I know it's called that. I read that all the time.
What do you call it?
Well, it's not forest green, but I think it's a green of nature. It's not a kind of a fake green. It's a green that you might find in leaves and trees.
Very vibrant green.
Pardon?
It's a very vibrant green.
Yes. And that was another part of selecting the manufacturer that we did, was they were able to control the color very well from ream to ream. They because of this type of construction. And I think that's a problem with the carpet that's there now. You can kind of see this dye lot is a little different than that dye lot, and it looks kind of patchy.
Mhm.
Very common problem, very in large spaces. But US Axminter was able to really have a good control over the colors and keeping them vibrant. The other colors that make up the pattern, we really tried to represent, a broad palette. And one of the important things is the background, which people don't usually notice, is speckled with golds and blues. And that speckle helps with problems of maintenance and dirt and
Right.
hiding spills and stains.
Those,
And
those,
there
those
was a
cigarette-
companion carpet. There was
I'm
a companion carpet designed that was a blue, here you go,
Mm.
a blue, a navy blue with that same speckle background.
Hmm.
And it
Oh,
was
yeah.
used at the edges where the port carpet was going to end, and something else like an airline floor material was going to begin. And that was one of the things we learned on the tour, that you don't, the port did not have necessarily control over the flooring everywhere. So the
Yeah.
holding rooms, the waiting rooms of the airlines could be anything.
Mhm.
So that blue band was used to separate the port green carpet
Mhm.
from whatever was going to become adjacent to it.
Yeah.
And then it was also used in transition areas, particularly high traffic areas, where you knew eventually you were going to have to change the carpet over the years.
Mhm.
And it gave you a starting and stopping place, so you didn't see the new against the old directly, and
Mhm.
it helped maintain a continuity over the years. And the carpet was there for 30 years.
Yeah, I was there for a very long time.
Yes.
I mean, I think
So,
what you were telling me about how the construction of that carpet versus the new carpet, when I talked to the people making it, they basically they've remade the old carpet using the same
yes,
technique, I think. And he was describing it as like blades of grass almost versus how
yes,
and it takes longer to do and it's way more expensive, but
yes.
um
Well,
there's
it's a woven product where the yarn is brought, is stitched up through the backing. And rather than being tufted, which is when the yarn pokes down through the backing and creates little loops, for example. And I'm sure you've seen where a carpet yarn comes up and it pulls and it's like a little zipper effect.
at my house.
Yes. Well, that can't happen with this woven carpet because the yarns that come up, as he was referring to as grass coming up, they are individual.
Mm.
So you can't pull one and have it have a ripple effect.
Oh, that's
So
so
it is
interesting.
a very good construction, but it is very expensive.
I've never really thought about that speckle in the back, and I wonder, it's so cool looking at it closely. I can see like purple and brown and blue. If that's what makes it appear almost feel teal, that like
Yes,
lightens it up or something.
yes, I can see that. Yeah. Well, and color is a
Yeah.
very subjective thing.
Well, I
Well,
just love the carpet. I mean, I don't know. It's so interesting because I wouldn't say I've ever before said I love a carpet, like I grew up in Oregon.
well, I'm flattered.
Yeah, like it's so interesting that people have such an emotional connection to this carpet. Why do you think that is?
Well, when it began, well, first of all, I think the whole airport is quite beautiful, and it continues to evolve into just spectacular, space for people to um, ex to experience the and there's a warmth and a softness and an inviting feel, I think, to the whole airport, and the carpet's a part of that. And when it started, when the remodel was going to happen, I think it was in 2015, they started to tear it out
Mhm.
to put in new.
Mhm.
And people were kind of outraged. And I think that's when it really clicked that people felt attached to it, and it became a social media thing to have your picture of your feet on the carpet. And the port actually sold a lot of the carpet that they tore out, and it was used. People could make doormats, or in fact, some of it was installed in one of our senators' offices in Washington, D.C. So I think it became kind of iconic at that time. I was invited in 2015. I was invited to sit beside the Grand Marshal of the Rose Festival Skylight Parade. And the Grand Marshal was a roll of the carpet. And the roll of carpet had a face, these googly eyes, and a hat, and a medallion of some sort around its neck. And they named it Petey. So I was invited to accompany Petey in the parade. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't available to do it, but appropriately, members from TSA accompanied Petey.
I've seen those pictures, yeah.
So I was quite flabbergasted to realize that citywide it had an emotional impact.
Yeah, I mean, people have tattoos of it, like it's on all kinds of things. How do you feel that something that you helped create is this? I mean, it's a symbol not just of Portland, but of Oregon, I think. I think kind of what you were talking about before, you didn't want it to just be Portland or Northwest like Oregon, but like the whole state. That's
I think all the members of the design team are very proud of the project, and it gives us a thrill to see that it is loved and remembered. And the new airport renovation is going to use it in small areas, not the whole renovation. And to think it can come back and still be popular 40 years later is just a proud moment.
That's cool. I think it's cool. It looks really good in the new airport. I have to say, I was like, ooh, it's great to see it back in its full glory. I mean, it's pretty big sections, the section that I saw, and they're changing the flooring. So it is not carpet. Most of it is not carpet.
Right.
Because obviously now roller bags are all that anyone has. I was trying to think, like, what did people do before that? Were they?
We lugged heavy carpets, and you traveled lighter because you couldn't carry a 55-pound suitcase.
Yeah, you had fewer clothes,
I have not seen the areas of the new design, but I am pretty sure that it will be a seamless hard surface, like the areas when you go through security into some of the retail or the food areas near security. They have a terrazzo patterned floor.
That's what it is. It's a terrazzo pattern. Yeah.
And that will also prevent the click clack of
right. The towel. Oh gosh, that would be so loud. I can't even imagine, like on tiles or something.
Well, you've probably been in airports where it's just deafening.
Yeah.
And the sounds of it going on and off of a escalator is zoop. You can just, it's a sound we could identify if we just played it blind for someone.
Right, totally.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. This is so great. I feel like honored to get to talk to one of the designers of the carpet. So
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be asked about it.
Thanks so much for listening to Beat Check with the Oregonian. If you like this show, give us a 5-star rating and review in Apple Podcasts. It really helps people find the show. And tell a friend. Help spread the word. The best way to support our journalism and stories like this one is with a subscription to the Oregonian Oregon Live. You can do that at OregonLive.com/pod support. Until next time.